Hello, this is Sweet Spot. Remember, we're making a show.
Sorry, I was just looking
Put
for
down
some...
the magazine, is that what we're calling that?
Yes, I'm just looking for an apartment in Rome.
Of course you are. What are you reading, Tony?
The New York Review of Books. 50 years ago, there was a strike of all of the New York City daily newspapers, including this one. The book publishers had no place to advertise, and a group of writers and poets and literary folk got together.
Not exactly the group of people you'd want in a bunker if you were going to war.
Well, on the other hand, through War and Peace, for 50 years now, the New York Review, which, full disclosure, former employer of mine.
How many readers?
Now, here's the thing about, because magazines are a beautiful ornament and vehicle of our civilization. I mean, there have been so
I'm glad
many
you
great,
mentioned that, because
so many great magazines.
I think part of what's going on here is because you walked over here on the subway with your New York Review of Books, we know you're a certain kind of person. Whereas if you were reading it on the iPad and they don't have an iPad app, probably, we wouldn't know that you were smart enough to read the New York Review of Books.
I know that you've been writing a lot about, in your column and elsewhere, about the transformation of magazines and about the death of a lot of magazines.
The marketplace, unfortunately, has spoken. Otherwise, important, good magazines have gone away. Gourmet has gone away. Newsweek has gone away.
And yet there are a lot that are still around.
Not only around, but here's a couple of
the Atlantic. There's
the Atlantic is storming along. Harper's
Vanity
not
Fair,
quite
the
so
New Yorker.
robustly.
But the point that I want to make was we don't have to make this all a celebration of the New York Review. But one thing that it has that I think the magazines that stick around and make a difference at whatever scale have is a clear sense of its identity. It knows what it is. It knows what it's about. Magazines are very often attached to their editors. When you think of Vogue, now you think of Anna Wintour.
Anna Wintour.
When you think of the current revived New York Magazine, you think of Adam Moss. When you think of the New York Review of Books, you think of Barbara Epstein, who passed away about 6 years ago, and Bob Silvers, who is still running it, who have been running it since day one, every 2 weeks, putting it out since 1963, and having been in that office and see how they do it, how they used to do it, designing every issue's cover on a yellow legal pad in pencil and whiteout.
It's not Facebook likes, oh, I think that, see which one gains traction. One person deciding
says,
over and over, yes,
this is what we're going to do. Yeah.
That's not going on the cover. I got an airplane the other day. I just happened to open an issue of Wired, which is, I'm not a huge fan of the magazine. I'm not exactly Mr. Technology. You know what? For an hour and a half on that flight, I dropped into a world that was not my own. I learned things I did not know. I had a physical, tactile experience. I had an intellectual experience as I took it in. And the coolest thing about it is when I got to the end of the magazine, I slipped it into the airline seat pocket. I left there. I was done with it. Part of what happens with the internet, you're never finished with it. There's always more. What magazines do you read?
I read the New York Review. I read the New Yorker, the New Republic. I didn't for a long time. I like a lot what it's doing now. I read the Atlantic. I like to read.
As opposed to what? To
look at pictures.
Okay.
I only ever read Playboy for the
have
articles.
All kinds of stuff in them. Like I read Cooks Illustrated, which is this very old school, almost science project type cooking magazine. They've got this offshoot called Cook's Country. It's about a certain way of living, right?
Yeah,
all right, so we've riffed about all these smarty pants magazines he allegedly reads.
But meanwhile, we want to know what do you, obviously you're devoted readers of the New York Times out there watching the Sweet Spot, but what do you read? What do you wish you read? What do you feel guilty about not reading? What do you pretend to read? What do you, keep sort of next to the couch to put out on the coffee table when certain people are coming over so you can impress them with what you've read?
Cat fancy. Used to read Newsweek, not anymore.